And we're back. Better late than never. Happy Saturday. Saturday? What day is it today? It is Sunday. It is Sunday. We had to move things back because of technical difficulties, and now we're having technical difficulties again. But super, super thrilled, honored, blessed to be joined tonight by the DIY musician himself, mentor extraordinaire, human being that just spreads empowerment through music across the freaking globe. Bobby Borg, how are you, my love?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to finally be face to face with you. Thanks for having me.
It's really good to have you. Good to see you again. I met you. I think it was, gosh, about 2 years ago at the taxi rally over in Los Angeles.
Yep.
And I've been just stalking you ever since. And
oh, awesome. I remember seeing you there. It was great. It was a great event.
It was a fantastic event. How did you get involved with taxi?
Good question. How did I get involved with them? I think that actually I was speaking somewhere, and somebody from the taxi, I was speaking at an event, and somebody from the taxi organization heard me speaking and asked me whether or not I'd be interested in doing some consulting with them or for them. And that's how I got involved with them. Then I started helping them with some of the screening that they do there. And then I moved on to doing all the conference stuff for them. And so just in case people don't understand what Taxi is an independent A&R company. It's a company that serves as the middleman between you and licensing opportunities. So with a subscription to Taxi, you get a listing which provides opportunities, and then you submit to those opportunities. And if the screener listens to it and thinks you're appropriate to be passed on, then you're passed on, and then potentially you get placed. So it's one of the things that you might consider in your marketing plan. Yeah.
No, it's such a fantastic organization, and I have so many questions for you, and I realize that we're running late, so I'm not going to get everything in. But how did you go from, because you started, I assume, your career, in the metal scene. Was that where you wanted to initially go? And how did you go from that to being a DIY musician coach?
So, I mean, like everybody else probably watching this, I became interested in music at a very, very young age, and was like, one of those kids that, were trying to find purpose in life. And, and music brought me purpose. So I fell in love with it and was one of those people that practiced 15 hours a day. I mean, I was a nutcase, and my vision was to be, an artist that was signed to a big label. I mean, that was the thing back then, and for the world, and I worked really hard towards that. And then when I sort of finally arrived to that, I realized that I had another calling, and that was, wow, I need to educate all the musicians that are trying to follow in my footsteps, because there's a lot of stuff that we need to know that we don't know.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is a facade too. Like once you get there, you're like, oh, okay, so this is what it all is. I mean, it's like, it always looks prettier on YouTube and at the Grammys and stuff like that. And it's, at the end of the day, it's a business. At the end of the day, we're entertainers. We're playing a part, and so we really have to know our game. We have to know the ins and outs. And I started doing research. I started finding out that there wasn't a whole lot of information back then about this. And I found the need and a hole in the marketplace, and started filling that hole as being someone that was like a musician for musicians. Let's break the shit down. Let's leave out all the stuff that's too complicated, and let's try to simplify this so that maybe people can have an easier path. Not that mine was incredibly hard, but just an easier one. They know they could maybe be a little bit more aware of what they're getting into. So
what do you think of the top? Sorry, yeah.
No, and then that was it. That was pretty much how, and then I just continued from there.
That's cool. Yeah, because being from New Zealand originally, I moved to America with this dream, with my guitar. I was going to make it. And then my first interaction with a major label was super gross. And they asked me things that I was not willing to do, if you know what I mean. Wrote a song about it. You don't know what I mean, or you're shaking your head?
No, I'm just saying, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just, It's crazy. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
like, I love the DIY mindset. I think it's so super beautiful to be able to, encourage and empower each other, to be able to take control and to really move forward in a way that is authentic with your own spirit, right? Are there, like, from your career with Warrant and, moving from that into doing, this DIY musician stuff, what have been like the three major things that you find have been like the keys, like, to why people should do DIY as opposed to necessarily handing all their rights over to a major label?
I get it. Well, the truth is that, if you don't DIY, you die, because because nobody is going to come rescue or save you till you've proven that you're worth signing. So,
right.
so it kind of has to start with DIY, whether or not you like it or not, right?
Sure.
Now let's look at it from the other perspective. Let's just say you've already made it. So like, why DIY? Because, when finally you get to the end of your contract term and you realize, wait a minute, we have a studio, we can make records. Wait a minute, we can hire a distributor. Wait a minute, we have hundreds of thousands of fans that come to our shows anyway. Why do we need somebody in the middle? So you might go back to doing it DIY. And there's been a lot of major label examples of people that have done this. I mean, I don't know why Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails is on my mind. He went from major back to sort of independent DIY, and then said, screw this takes too much time, and went back to major. So it doesn't work for everybody, and not everybody has those choices. But ultimately, number one, you have to start with DIY, because if you don't, it's like saying, I want to play in the NFL, but I'm not willing to play high school football. It's just like, it doesn't work that way. You start off playing Pee-wee, then you go to high school football, then you play college. And if you play college really well, you might get drafted into the NFL, right? So that's just kind of the way it works with music as well. So that's number one. Number two, of course, is that, one of the things that people don't realize when they get signed to a major is there are a lot of things that you might have to do that you don't want to do. Like, for example, the first thing they did is threw us with a songwriter. And I'm kind of like, well, wait a minute. I don't mind writing with Desmond Childs, who's written for Aerosmith and Bon Jovi and Kiss and all those people. But it's just kind of like, what's wrong with our stuff? Because basically he's throwing songs at us that Cher, Bon Jovi, or Aerosmith could do. So it's just kind of like this generic formulaic stuff with no personality. Any one of those artists can do it, So I wasn't necessarily too happy about that, because I was just kind of like, all right, this is kind of a little weird. Also, the other thing is that you don't really have control of like, the time. It's like, I remember saying, hurry up and wait. Now I know what that means, because you're just sitting around waiting for people to sort of make decisions for you. And it's like, you can't do anything without their approval, right? And then, of course, the third thing is, when you do start making money, a lion's share of it is going to them. And I'm not saying that they don't have the right to that, because they invest tons of money that typically they lose on. So they're trying to make sure that they get it back. But those three things are the reasons why you might just say, screw this, let's just DIY, let's be in control of what we're doing, let's have fun with this, let's, get into the spirituality of this and the fun of this, and let's just make music, get it out there.
For real. How do so, like, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, obviously. How has, this pandemic and all of the batshit crazy shit that's going around the world, how is that affecting your own music and also the DIY musician?
Well, I mean, I guess to start off with me, and maybe we'll just focus on the pandemic.
Okay.
Because all of the other stuff is so huge, and I mean, not that the pandemic isn't, but it's easier to talk about the pandemic than all that other stuff. There's so much sensitivity involved with those other things, and I think they're extremely important. But it's just like, when is this, where is this, my God,
I feel you.
we got to get a grip on this stuff. But in any case, like going back to the pandemic, I mean, like who the hell would have ever predicted this to happen? This is like from a movie, in fact, I think there is a movie similar to what's going on. I think Apocalypse. I think it's called, I think it might even be called Pandemic. I forget. But in any case, I mean, I would, when it all happened, it was just kind of weird, and it was just like, wow, this is crazy that this is going on. It's put a little hamper in my life because I'm very into physical fitness. So now I couldn't go to the gym. So for a while I was just trying to, I had 25-pound weights in my room and I was trying to figure out like, how, okay, so I can do this. But then I was just realizing, shit, this sucks. So, bought the exercise bike and, and did that kind of thing. Now I'm spinning in my house and I'm into it.
Okay, cool.
From the creativity part, from what I currently do now, I can write online, I can teach online. So all of the schools where I teach, at USC, and so forth, was all done online. I didn't miss a beat. It's like, in fact, to be honest with you, I rolled out of bed, boom, teach a class, jump in the shower, go for a jog, come back. I mean, there wasn't the driving back and forth and all that stuff. So I didn't really mind it. But now moving on to like the DIY musician, the people that I speak to mostly, how has it affected them? Well, obviously, a major revenue stream. In fact, we can even say two major revenue streams, not the second one as much as the first, have been knocked out, so essentially a lot of people like went on the road, whether or not you are the artist yourself or you're a musician supporting those artists. And I know a lot of people now that are just sitting at home and they can't go play. I mean, they can't play a wedding, they can't play a cruise ship, they can't play a local bar, they can't play, even their cover band can't play, So this has really hurt them. And then as far as when you're playing, you sell merch. So now the merch industry is kind of hurting a little bit. Even though you can buy merch online, it still took a big hit because the majority of merch sales are from live performances. So, so that has taken a hit. Not to mention that we don't really make a lot of money from Spotify streams and from other streams. So it's like, what the hell have you got left? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So musicians have been forced to be obviously more creative. I mean, I'm not going to sit up here taking all the time on talking about you can do live concerts, because like literally everyone is doing that now. So you have to be really careful that you're providing value and something interesting and unique that someone else isn't. Otherwise, it's just another living room concert, So you have to have some sort of angle or some sort of uniqueness, maybe, But now, from a positive standpoint, I have noticed that in this time right now, it's given artists a greater chance to engage with their fans. I mean, kind of like what me and you are doing right now for the fans out there, right? I mean, we're offering discussions like this when ultimately they might have to take a class at a university to get, or they might have to buy books to get, or they might have to consult to get. I noticed that a lot of professionals are now willing to do this kind of stuff as a way maybe to show support to the community, and to say, hey, we understand what you're going through, and try to be more accessible to help people get through this time. But I've seen, I think ultimately that has been sort of one of the most positive things I've seen out of this, is that there's a lot more engagement, a lot more interaction with fans online and things of that nature. So, one thing I would like to urge people though is to not get too caught up on what's going on now, because it would be hard for me to believe, that like this is going to be it. We're going to be wearing masks like 20 years from now, I'm sure with all of our intelligence and innovation, we're going to figure out like something eventually, whether or not it be a vaccine or whether or not it be a way of getting all back together again, where maybe it's done in a safe way or whatever the case might be. There's crazy things like live concerts at drive-thrus now.
I've seen that. Germany's doing like drive-through raves.
I actually think that's pretty cool. Actually, it's like the drive-through theaters are coming back, in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, so, I would be thinking about like what's happening like next, like,
Right.
like where is there innovation that we
Yeah.
can see like after all of this? Because if you can get kind of like your grip on that and be first, then you're not going to be following, you'll be leading. So
For real.
whatever that is, that's what I would urge people to be thinking about.
Start brainstorming. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So you do a lot of things. Not just teaching and not just running these, these DIY courses and things. You also are like a chronic YouTube supporter, and you do a lot of things on YouTube. You do a lot of things on Instagram. You're very like ongoing with your social media engagement. Like, how do you as a doer of all things, but also on a grand magnitude that a lot of DIY musicians want to get to, how is it that you manage all of those tasks? Are you doing it all yourself, or do you have a team around you? Or
well, that's a great question. I mean, before I answer, first I would like to say that I would spend even more time, except what I do is ultimately at this point right now in my career, my main job is as a college professor, essentially, right? So like most of my time is spent standing in front of an audience and then like having to deal with everything else that's involved, like grading papers, like answering questions like, I don't understand what to do, all that stuff, and that literally is a full-time job. And thankfully that also pays me very well as well. So that's my first and foremost obligation. If all I have to do is sit at home, like, and do nothing but that stuff, like I would just be like killing it, like big time, because I would be spending all my time on that. So I would like to even have a bigger profile myself online, but I have to put things in perspective. I'm not going to sit at home and do, I gotta, I know who butters my bread, as the saying is, right? But all that being said now, I do it all myself. I do not believe in automation. I do not believe in other people doing it for you. And the reason why is just because it's fake. I mean, it's like as if, like, let's pretend a robot of Bobby Borg is talking to you right now, or, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You go out and you buy the fake Twitter followers, and like, so what? Now you have like, 15,000 like dead people on your Instagram, on your Twitter that doesn't even respond, or so there's no engagement, there's nothing. Yeah. I'd rather have 100 people that engage than 10,000 that do nothing. So it's that automatic look like, oh my God, he has like 60,000 followers, and it's just like, that people like are attracted to, but at the end, it doesn't pay off, right? So that's number one. Number two, if you try too hard to engage, like, and you have these like automated tools and stuff like that, Instagram is horribly sensitive, and they will shut your shit down like immediately. They will like block you, and they will not allow posts. So if you try to friend too many people at once, they'll block you. You try to defriend people, they'll block you. You try to actually like make like a nice little paragraph of exactly what you want to say, and then like click and paste to like a lot of people, because you're like, why should I write the same shit 10 times? They'll block you. It's amazing. So you almost are forced into saying, look, this is just a long game strategy. The goal is to like touch people, and touch one person at a time, if that's what it's going to take. And then the next thing you know, a year later, you're like, holy shit, I have 2 or 3 or 4,000 more followers, and now all of a sudden, like, I'm spiking and I'm blowing up because people are like noticing me, and it just takes time. So one final thing, make it part of your life. You go to sleep at night, right? You wake up at night in the morning, right? You brush your teeth, I hope, to at night, right? You eat lunch, breakfast, dinner, right? So why don't we just make social media as part of that schedule, and just say, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to spend half an hour and I'm going to look at the clock and do nothing more than that. And I'm going to know exactly what it is that I'm doing. And then maybe in the evening, you do another half an hour again, and you have specific strategies. Like today, I'm going to reach out to people. Today I'm going to post. Today I'm going to reach out. Et cetera. And you just have a schedule.
Yeah.
then that is probably the best approach to this.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I love that. When it comes to I mean, your music career started in a time where you already talked about this, where a big record label sort of pushed you and marketed you and did all the things. And I feel like there's a huge shift these days to really move away from I want 1 million followers to I want, like just like you said, I want 10,000 really engaged followers. Do you find that the path to that, like mentally, has been a big shift for you, or how have you navigated that difference in approach?
Well, I've got a big surprise for you, right? Again,
I love surprises.
It's all about the facade. Like, everyone thinks that once you get signed to a major label, or I should say, when you're early on in your career, you think that once you get signed to a major label, all your problems are taken care of.
Right.
That is absolute crap. When I got my first record deal back in, I think, 1991 with Atlantic Records, they did shit. Like, literally, I ran the entire fan club. I spent like 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 in the morning contacting fans all across the United States, asking them to like, back then we had MTV, asking them to call MTV, asking them to like hang up posters in local stores and shit like that. It was absolutely insane. I got on a train and went to New York City and was sitting in a circle with the freaking interns licking envelopes. And Jason Flom, who was a huge A&R guy, like, comes in and goes, "You're the artist. What are you doing here?" And I almost said, "Yeah, what am I doing here?" But I wasn't that arrogant. I was like, I'm here because your fucking lame ass fucking Atlantic Records team is doing shit. Sorry if you're not allowed to.
No, it's real talk for a reason, y'all.
yeah. You know, so, and I was just so yeah. So even back then, man, it's like, it's almost like, you know, it's like an aircraft carrier. One plane takes off and everyone's like, okay, it's in the air, next plane, you know, and that's all the time you get. And, you know, if like you prove that something substantial is happening, then everyone gets excited and they'll go with it. But if not, you're on your own. So you have to galvanize the label by doing whatever you can to get them excited about you. And there's tons of examples of bands that like were failing and like just went out there and bought their own van and toured and got the record company excited and created sparks, and then sparks turned into and then sparks were turned into flames by the label. Right. You know what I mean? So I don't see it as really being any different. I've been DIYing my whole life, even with a major label and even with major management companies too. I was signed to some of the world's biggest management companies, and I love them and they do great things for people like Metallica. But for us, it was almost like they never existed. It was like I'm being managed by ghosts. It was ridiculous. And I understand why. I mean, it's like, you know, come on, where are you going to put your time, in Metallica or me? You know, I mean, you know, so.
Right. So it really is a case of, you know, DIY until you know, almost don't need anybody. Yeah. And then that's when they come and they're like, "Oh, hey, I heard you needed us." Yeah. And, like, then, really?
You know, I hate to say it, that's the way it is. And it's just like, I don't necessarily advocate DIYing forever, because I think there's a lot of value in outsourcing. And keep in mind that what we're talking about is a win-win situation. Essentially, in economics, it's called opportunity cost. For every opportunity, there's a cost of that opportunity. But the opportunity and the cost has to be equal. So if you build up your career and you're offered an opportunity to work with somebody, and it makes sense, what you're giving up is what you're getting back in return, then you enter into these lovely relationships, which could actually take you a lot further than you will ever be able to do on your own. Right. So, you know, the problem with most DIY artists, and I say this respectfully, because don't forget, you guys, I am an artist, right? Is that a lot of artists are lazy. A lot of artists don't take responsibility for the business side of things and just want to play their guitars, you know, or just want to, like, you know, spin their turntables or whatever. And they don't want to deal with all the other stuff. And they just think that they're so all and high and mighty that they're too, you know, it's like the work is beneath them. And they're like, you know, I'm a star. Don't you know who I am? You know, and it's like, you know, and someone else is supposed to do that stuff. But that is just, it's not true. You have
Even
to
Bobby
get that.
Borg licks envelopes.
It's just not true. You've got, sure, you might be a star, but like pick up the damn equipment and put it into the van and go play and negotiate your own deals and and then hopefully you'll get to a point where now you can hire out people to do it for you because it makes sense and it's a win-win situation. Now you have leverage, right? So I actually encourage people to DIY and then to look for relationships further down the line. But again, the danger is that you're like, okay, Bobby, go DIY, go DIY, go DIY. I need a manager, and we have to like get that out of our minds.
Yeah. No, I've had the opposite problem. I've had people say, "Don't you want a manager?" And I'm like, "Nope." I don't like being told what to do. Like I'm cool with I know my lane at the moment. When it's time, right? Like, but
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do your own. I mean, let's just say, for example, let's take me as an author, right? So I've written 7 books on the music industry, and I've never none of those books have ever been published by just only me.
Right.
And there's a reason to that. I've had publishers like Billboard for my first book called The Musician's Handbook. And then I've had Hal Leonard for my other books called Business Basics for Musicians and Music Marketing for the DIY Musician, right? And had them publish me because I was just like, okay, so what I'm giving up is, not much control because I built up a whole lot of leverage before I even entered into the deal. So they trusted me and liked my creativity. What I am giving up is a significant portion of royalties. Yes, I know that. But they, release expertly edited and produced books and laid out books with beautiful covers, and they have distribution all across the world, and they can get it into stores. And that's not my major revenue source. The book is considered a brand builder for me. Yeah. So I might not make much money from books, but I get hired to speak at Berklee College of Music for 2 days and get $5,000 or whatever, So that's that's where it that's kind of, so you have to be clear about sort of what you're doing and why you're doing it as well.
What is your why?
What is what? I'm sorry.
What is your why?
My why? Like, yes. Why I exist?
No, not like that. But I mean, kind of.
Like why I am.
What is your why? What drives you? Like, what inspires you? What helps you to like, you know what I mean? Like, what makes you feel good about your work, your soul, your living?
There's a famous author that has a lecture about that, right? Your why. Okay. Like, you should know your why. For me, wow. I mean, ultimately, I can tell you that, life is meaningless without purpose. So, I've always been blessed to have a purpose in life ever since I was young. Music, it gave me purpose. Go down in the cellar and practice, and then when I played and I saw how I had the ability to move people, like just like how you can convey your own emotions through the instrument, and then that conveys to other people. It just was just amazing, right? And you can heal people and you can make people happy. And when I have people write me and say, oh my God, you changed my life, or that's a trip when people do that, when they say you inspired me and stuff like that, that's pretty crazy. So it's ultimately to for the betterment of the world, but as a result of that, it actually is very fulfilling to myself, to stand for something, to have purpose in life. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Right?
I love that quote.
Yeah,
it's a great quote. How have you handled this pandemic as an artist? Because I recognize, and I'm only speaking from a female artist perspective, I don't know what it's like as a man, obviously, but balancing having a music career that is very prominent and having family.
Well, that's a good question. And so I'm going to assume that when most people hear that question, they assume an immediate family, as in my particular case would be a wife, or it would be children, and then the dogs and everything else that goes with it. So Now, keep in mind that my life has not been normal in any way, shape, or form. Like, I grew up literally practicing hours and hours a day, like, and just being fine with that, you know, with sitting myself in a room for 10 to 15 hours a day and practicing. I was totally cool with that. And then, you know, immediately I became part of a very social scene, because when you're a musician, you know, it's very social. You're playing in front of tons of people. So you're always around tons of people, and you have all these different relationships, you know, in different cities and different countries and different, you know, states and so on and so forth. And just by virtue of my life, traveling from city to city, night after night, I was in steady relationships, but they never materialized into a marriage. So I am not married. I do not have kids, and I do not have dogs that I have to walk.
You don't have a dog? What?
I have an awesome goldfish named Princeton, after the city I was born in. And his thing is this big. He's awesome. So yeah, so I know this sounds really, really like masochistic, but I do not have the obligations that maybe a normal person would have, which therefore has given me the ability to put 100% of all my free time into me. And, you know, and I don't, sounds selfish, but me does things for other people. So, you know, yeah, and I'm totally cool with this. Totally. Like, I mean, I could go to the gym and not feel guilty about it. I could like stay up and write until 4 a.m. and not feel guilty about it, you know? So I'm good.
No, I totally hear you. A friend of mine said to me recently, it'd be selfish of you to be in a relationship, because, you know, you'd be with them like saying, hey, I'm with you, but then, you know, you're not. You're elsewhere writing music, playing music, recording music.
You know, and there's a lot of show people, a lot of entertainers that are, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, that they aren't, you know, in the traditional family, you know. And I'm really proud that I've always followed like what I felt from within, and never bought into like what everyone else thinks you should be doing, because easily I could be, you know, in those types of relationships where I do not think that I would have been happy. Of course. Yeah, just would not have been happy. And like, think about all the children I have anyway with all my students, right? I'll tell you, after a day of teaching and answering the same question 10 times, like, I don't need any children. Right?
Daddy, why? Daddy, why?
Yeah. No, and trust me, I say that jokingly. I love what I do, but you know, dealing sometimes with, you know, strong-minded young 21 or 22-year-olds that are also smart and in a big school, you know, and can be like, oh boy, okay, you know everything and you're 20, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, do I need that in a son? No. I watch my brother, like how he deals with his son, and I'm just going, dude, like, don't sign me up for that. I'm not interested. Yeah, you know.
Do you feel that this is like a kind of maybe an egotistical question, being that most of your students are younger, I'm assuming, you know, they might not have even been born when you guys were at your prime. Do they know who you are? Do they figure out eventually, you know, the list of credentials that you have, and how do you balance that? Does it even worry you, or?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, to answer, the simple answer would be that, like, typically, like, a lot of like dads and moms my age, like, you know, force their record collection on their young kids. You know?
Yeah, sure.
So a lot of them are like, no way, dude, I heard of you and stuff. And surprisingly, you know, like, there's a lot of kids that are wearing, like, you know, still like Van Halen t-shirts and AC/DC t-shirts and Yes t-shirts and Genesis t-shirts, and like, I'm going like, wow, you know who those bands are, and Jimi Hendrix t-shirts, you know. So yeah, so a lot of them like know or have heard or are curious, so Google me and then go, oh shit, I heard of you or whatever. And then in other cases, you know, I don't really care, because I would not be there if I didn't have the credentials to be there.
Of course.
So,
Of course.
and I think they know that they don't just let anyone off the street like walk in and teach at a major university. So
Yeah.
I think they get that, okay, this guy has something going on. Occasionally you might have somebody that goes, like, hey, like, well, that business isn't the business now. And I'm like, shut up, you idiot. It's just like, it's like, I'm not sitting here like, reliving the industry back in the 80s. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
we keep on working with new clients, you keep on growing, you keep on improving. I am 100% to get dedicated to constant learning, constant education. In fact, right before this conversation, I'm researching a new book with a partner called The Intro to Music Publishing, and it's like, you have to know all of the latest laws concerning the MMA and so on and so forth. And it's like, yeah, so it's, yeah, some people do get stuck in their past, but trust me, I'm not sitting at home watching the touchdown I scored, on the high school football team,
Oh, so you were a quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I played football, but just as sort of the metaphor, I'm not sitting at home even thinking about like
Gotcha.
what I did back then. It's like, I've moved on. It's part of who I am, but it's just like,
yeah,
one chapter of our book of life.
Of course.
Yeah.
With your YouTube channel and your Instagram, you're constantly feeding, and I love it, because you're such a, obviously you're such a wealth of knowledge, and you're constantly giving out tidbits for people to kind of learn from you and grow from you and interact with you. Do you find that has been helpful with, have you gotten much feedback from people on and growing their careers through that, or is it specifically through your DIY musicians course that you are, that you're working hand in hand with people, or how does that work for you?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's kind of like the question is sort of multifaceted, because anything that I do, on Instagram or post on YouTube, whatever research went into doing that obviously makes me a better person, which also then makes me it's going to come up again in another lecture. It's going to be used, somewhere else, So it's kind of like, you do the work and then you kind of spread it out, to those that need it and are interested in listening. So that's kind of how I look at it ultimately. But yeah, so it's part of all the one cause, so to speak. But I definitely have dedicated content specifically for Instagram, specifically for YouTube, which might not necessarily be taught in my classes. So it's like exclusive to Facebook, Instagram, and so on and so forth, and YouTube. I enjoy doing it, thankfully, because it takes a shitload of time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. So sorry that the the technological difficulties of my life seem to have all come to a head today. So I apologize about that, but thank you so much for your patience. And I want to say a massive thank you as well for being, I know that we've only met once, but you're every now and then I'll get a YouTube notification that you've commented on a music video of mine. And I super appreciate that. And I know that everybody else that you reach out to, it means a great deal that to have somebody of your caliber, of your expertise, actually give a fuck about what we're doing. And I think this is one of the beautiful things about being a DIY musician, is that we are all, as much as we're all in the rat race, we're also a big community, and we're all, we wouldn't be anywhere if we weren't able to support each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any way that, like, beyond, obviously we can enroll in your course, is there any other way, like how can people get more of you?
Well, I think probably let's go with the free ways first, right? So, because people are on a budget, and then and then they can move up the chain, so to speak, if they wish. But I would say jump on like youtube.com/Bobby Borg. So Bobby is spelled BOBBY BORG. So YouTube/Bobby Borg. And every Tuesday, and now starting every Saturday, I'm going to be releasing educational videos. That are short, 10 10 minutes, maybe so, that are with interviews with top, people in the industry on a variety of different topics, not just like how to get more Instagram fans, and stuff like that, and how to trick the algorithms, stuff that like more important issues, communication issues, like, music and social causes, like, hello, right? Like, musicians have incredible power to change the world. And with what's going on right now, we need to put that into our music. Right. So I might have a discussion with a doctorate of sociology or something, and talking about social causes that go all the way back to the 60s and even before that, And then I'll have a discussion about, it's, in June, I believe, was LGBTQ month. So I had something about that, because there's a lot of people in musicians that, are of that community. And I think it's was, respectful to honor them, and then, I'll have something about like today, which is Father's Day, and like, tips I learned, for success from my father, and that's kind of a fun thing to do. So it's all over the place, and you'd be like, why not? I mean, it's just like, instead of sitting at home, like Googling, like, road rage in America or something, like, when when people stay at home and just like go through those YouTube things where you just Google random shit, it's like, why not like get some educational videos, so that's number one. So love to see you guys subscribe and hit notifications. Second thing, on Instagram, I post these little 1-minute segments. So if you can't handle 10 minutes, like 1 minute, boom, in and out. So you should definitely do that. Second. And then I guess third, you can go to my website, bobbyborg.com. And currently right now, if you go to the books pages, you can download a free chapter of my book. The first chapter of both books are available for free right now. So now, all that being said, once you do that and you feel like, wow, I like this guy, then, purchase the book. And then after that, UCLA also offers courses, and USC offers courses online. And you certainly could sign up for a course if you wish to do that. And then the next level up would be if anyone ever wanted to consult, I do one-on-one consults as well. Yeah. But start with the bottom first and work your way up, because I know everyone's on a budget. And if it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, and just the bottom level works for you, that's cool too, But let me know that you're digging the videos. At least throw out a shout out or something, so I know that there's some heartbeats out there. And yeah, so that's pretty much it.
No, you're fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really, really humbled that you wanted to come and join me on my my Real Talk, because this is all about empowering people, and especially musicians and creatives at the moment. We need the artivists to step up and shine now more than ever. So humbled and grateful for you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And just as a final word, like, you just got to focus on your love for music. I know there's a lot of things that get in the way that sometimes make it not fun. But you just have to focus on the satisfaction and pleasure of playing your music, and the fact that music is a communication tool that does reach and touch people in magnificent ways. So focus on that, and don't focus on like all the bells and whistles, because when you get to the bells and whistles, you might just realize that they're not really bells and whistles, right? So always focus on like why you started. I think that's really important. And just keep at it.
Yeah, 100%. What is your why? Everything goes from there. Thank you guys so much for listening in. Again, this is Bobby Borg from Bobby Borg Consulting. Be good to each other. Spread love like it's going out of fashion. Be your own kind of superhero. And please, I know I say normally call your mum, but today is Father's Day. And so please, for the love of heavy metal music, call your dad.
For sure. Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Even the strongest sometimes fall. It's okay, you can't win them all. Even the strongest have their days. Just be